Good news everyone, Colony has been renewed for a third season by the USA Network. Well, hello and welcome to my final review of the second season of Colony. It was a considerably great episode. The second season of the show as a whole did have a lot of ups and downs in terms of quality. The pace at times went so slow it became absolutely painful as opposed to a show like The Expanse, which airs the night before and brings a lot of fun and a lot of action to the table with each and every episode. And at its slowest paces, it's always way faster than most episodes of Colony, making its episodes extremely fulfilling and satisfying. I have to admit though, Sarah Wayne Callies has got her shit together slowly throughout the season and has been performing way better than on the first season. Alan Snyder still happens to be my favorite character on the show, followed by Broussard, then Maddie. The deaths of Lindsay and Karen were some of the best events in the season of the show, even though their roles were very well portrayed, well enough for us to hate their characters out of being painfully evil, wanting to see them go down as a result. Bram of course was the most annoying character of the season. He's definitely one lost boy with the capability to lie like there's no tomorrow. I'm usually not a big fan of lying, so you can understand why I kinda hate the kid even more now than I did a few episodes back. However, on the finale, things are a little bit different for Bram. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. The second season as a whole, finale included, gave us different viewing angles to every single one of the major players on the show, allowing us to have more insight into who they are, what motivates them, and what makes them tick. The clues were very limited throughout the majority of the season, and it kept getting harder to build a theory around the whole occupation. However, the finale seems to have given us some insight on the Raps, or did it now? But let's do the usual and take a look at the finale's top moments and arcs and figure out what we can make out of them. And remember, I'll be posting a theory video soon after this one, so stay tuned for that one once you're done watching my review. I know a lot of us hate references to Lost and go crazy over them because they believe the ending was terrible and, well, the sixth season as a whole actually was terrible. Not that I share this belief, but this is a Carlton Cuse show. It is bound to happen, so just bear with me here. That very first scene felt very Dharma Initiative, the way it kept cutting in and out in a very similar manner. On the subject of Lost, I'll be uploading a video pretty soon discussing the show and analyzing the strengths and weaknesses of its final season, and what I think could have been done better, and what I believe went wrong, which is not much really. Feel free to check it out when I do upload it. But the only indication that very first scene gives us is a host is injured or broken and some earthly collaborators are doing whatever they can to fix him, and the assumption here is that it is all a flashback about the host Broussard's cell abducted on the first season, ending up being returned to their occupation by will. The last words in that scene are uttered by the host doctor and they happen to be the host's own line. Now combine that with the major tech surgery the host had to go through, and we get the impression that the hosts are mechanical AIs. We've come to know more about the hosts in 3 minutes of the finale of the second season than we have come to know about them in 2 entire seasons. But are we sure that is actually a wrap? I personally am not, but I'll circle back to that on my theory video that I'll be uploading later on today or early tomorrow. So now that Noah is dead, we see the Bowman couple trying their best to get out of LA by contacting her group, the Den Mother. Initially, their attempt to use Hennessy's radio to get in touch with them seems to fail, but when Will uses the numbers they found in Noah to switch the radio's frequency around, we get our second Lost reference yet, through this number station. As I mentioned earlier, with Carlton Cuse in the creator seat and 2 references in a row, I'm starting to think this is no coincidence, planning all these Easter eggs into the season finale. After all, these were all integral aspects of what everyone believed were the better and greater seasons of Lost, even the fans that didn't like the final season. Will, though, figures out the number station is about codes, what he refers to as an old spy trick, that only someone who would know what they're looking for would be able to figure out what it all means. Snyder, and as usual, is the star of the season finale. Early on during the episode, he's very weary about all the commotion within the LA block with all the blackjack units moving in and around the colony. Helena might have thought she was smart enough to be capable of hiding the news about the rendition from him, but Snyder is smart enough to be able to figure it all out for himself. I mean, he wouldn't have made it alive and in the ranks thus far if he didn't have that much of a brain to his name. So he first gets to Homeland and works on getting the information out of Bennett, who informs him the block is being evacuated. Love though how when he asks him if the Governor General didn't bring him up to speed, he responds with a straight face, pretend she hasn't. So one last time this season I'm going to say it. Peter Jacobson is the golden actor on this show, because while some of the actors and how they portray their characters are okay and while others are good, maybe even great at times, he stands alone in being exceptional. But Bennett as well seems to be lying, telling Snyder the population of LA is being moved to San Fernando, making up some BS reason about supply shortages for the evacuation, which wouldn't fly over Snyder's head so easily, leading him to ask him to give him the real story instead of the official one. But at that point it seems Bennett wasn't just lying, he's in the dark as well. He tells Snyder that it's all a move made to accommodate the search for the gauntlet by the intelligence department, which actually gets Snyder to realize there's more to all of this than the head of Homeland knows. That of course takes him right to Helena's office. Seriously, I can't believe she didn't realize so far that Alan is no idiot, especially when it's the main reason she has him in her employ. He's smart enough to sniff out all the bullshit thrown at him, and he's a survivor. Now Helena initially seems to be fine with the total rendition. She tells Snyder that she's been defending the block for months now, and that has become a nightmare for both her and the Raps. Tells him that there is a faction of hardliners within the Raps who managed to get their word through, overruling the more moderate ones. You've got to love Snyder's reaction to her use of the word hardliners. There are moderate aliens. That was pretty much the best sarcastic comment on a TV series in 2017 so far. But there's good reason why I used initially when describing Helena's reaction to the total rendition there. She does seem so defensive of herself, out of guilt possibly, explaining to Alan how she did all she can to stop it all from happening, right after she informs him the decision has been made towards total rendition, and that all they have got is 6 hours before it all happens. She does tell him as well that she's moving to a new position with the global authorities in Europe, and that she's secured a position for him with her over there. Tells him she's arranged for his daughter to be exempted from total rendition, even though she can't join them in Europe. So Will and Katie were sloppy picking up Blackjack tail on their way to Broussard's hideout, leading them right to it, and they come with pods. Katie ends up putting the kids into hiding, hopefully to be safe, but before they're gone, Katie hands Bram a gun, asking him to make sure they never manage to take his siblings. So finally, the kid feels his parents are reliant on him, and the look on the kid's face at that moment made up a bit for all the shit he's been pulling throughout the past few episodes. He does seem a bit worried and scared, but that kind of reliance on him, that seems to pump courage through his veins. It was no surprise that Morgan died during the sequence. We all did kind of expect that if anyone would fall to their death on that scene, it would most definitely be her. So seeing her going down first wasn't much of a surprise there. It was amazing though watching Will and Broussard together in action. Loved the whole shootout sequence, ending up with them taking the guy attempting to neutralize them down. I'm sure as well the Black Hats probably had orders to bring them in alive and in pods, and that possibly worked in their favor. So while Broussard speaks of digging another trench, hiding underground once more, Will believes all they need to do is contact Snyder, offer him the gauntlet, have their way out of the block, propose the death of the members of his team to secure this piece of tech. Broussard doesn't view this as an option. Will and Katie though seem to make a good argument in return. Why stay and die with the gauntlet when you can trade it in to live another day, and it seems to work. We see Will contact Snyder and offer him the gauntlet in return for relocation outside the colony. And regardless of our doubts about Snyder by the end of the episode, I do like how he has a soft spot for Will. He calls him an old friend, indicates how he would get past his healthy skepticism for him, and asks him about the location for a mate. Snyder then goes into the commander in charge of the total rendition and informs him he has information on the gauntlet, tells him that he's making his offer as a representative of himself rather than of the Governor General, and the man tells him if he does deliver, he wouldn't have to work for anything ever again. So correct me if I'm wrong here, but I thought Snyder did actually make it clear to Maddie that the greatest day is all a bunch of garbage and there is nothing true or real about it. Why would she then go back to that temple? Well, it could be her way of finding shelter post being kicked out of the green zone. However, her visit to the temple starts bringing her to the realization that something isn't right, especially when the preacher tells everyone standing outside, including herself, that they're all being located to the San Fernando block. Now forget about all that Maddie has done all along. Part of what she's done was to secure her own son and his future, and another was to live a lavish life, which should have not been a reason to start with, but let's get over it for a moment here. So let's agree that it was part greed and part maternal instinct, and that we could understand, and cut her some slack based on it, even though we would still hate her choices of actions. But some of her scenes in the finale, and the acting put into it, those watery eyes holding the tears behind, did make her subject to our pity. Mine at least. In my personal opinion, that is kind of overpayment for her deeds there. She actually never did anything that led to enough damage that is worthy of a possible death sentence. So Broussard sacrificing himself for what remains of his team and the only family he has, Will, Katie and their 3 kids, and of course for the Gauntlet leaving the block, was so touching. He seems to not want to put them at risk with him leaving along with them, so he decides to stay behind. Honorable to say the least. The exchange of nods between him and Will in their last scene together, that said volumes about how far both characters have come since the premiere of the series. It did reflect how they have both come to understand more about one another than we've ever dreamed they would, even though it did make sense from the get-go that Will would end up erring on the side of the Resistance. Better than any reveal we could get, better than any piece of information about the aliens, was that scene with Alan Snyder meeting Will. It gave us so much hope in the man having more to him than greed and selfishness and looking for his own good and his good alone. Snyder tells both him and Broussard that he wants to leave the block with them, that the host sealed the fate of Los Angeles with total rendition. When asked by Will if they didn't offer him an out, he tells them about the position Elena carved for him with the global authorities, but that he would choose otherwise because he still has a conscience, that he decided he doesn't want to be a rat anymore. And he does give us the impression that he's honest about it all, that he really believed every word that came out of his own mouth. So it seems that instead of making a deal to get Will and Katie out of the block, Snyder has them impersonate his Red Hat guards and drive him out of the block under the premise he's taking their kids to a youth camp as part of an exclusion from total rendition. Now it is at their second checkpoint out of the block that things get messy, forcing Will and Katie to take off their masks in a final attempt to save his family. Will tells the sergeant and his team the truth about the evacuation. And that made all the difference in the world. Each of these men has a family. Each of these men has a brain. Each of these men can't for a moment there decide not to follow orders blindly, but instead make decisions for themselves. Katie's words though are the ones that get to him on a deeper level. We've made different choices, but we've all made them for the same reasons. And the sergeant decides to let them through, decides to act human rather than be one more slave to the occupation. That scene was one of my favorite scenes on the entire season. It opens up a lot of possibilities for the 3rd season of the show, including a wide-scale resistance, especially if Will and Katie manage to spread the word to another block, or more than just one more block. The final scenes of the episode were pretty packed there. Red Hats shooting anyone who tries to make a run for it, where all those people are held to be transported to the factory, Maddie included. There was also Elena out of the block looking in, seeing the RAP ships flying to transfer the citizens of the block to the factory, where they would be either used as laborers, or they would die, or a mix of both, depending on how much use they find for them. Her watery eyes do confirm that feeling of guilt I mentioned early on with her scene with Snyder. The ships hovering over people, all huge, bringing darkness into whatever remains in their lives, while the Bowmans drive out and into a possible trap set upon Snyder's activation of the tracker he has on him. Now speaking of Snyder's possible treachery, let's do first things first. Snyder is to Colony what Benjamin Linus was to Lost, and both Peter Jacobson and Michael Emerson perform in similarly exciting capacities. Yes, I realize I'm making a third Lost reference here, and I think no matter how much you start complaining in the comments about not wanting this to be another Lost, you do see the similarities. Snyder gives us both impressions. He's good and he's evil, at different points in time of course. He gives us the impression he cares about everyone, then he makes us believe he's out only for himself. He has his own daughter, who seems to be the one person in the world he cares about the most. Think what Alex was to Linus. He does seem to care about the block, about its survival, the way Linus cared about the island. But as I mentioned, Snyder managed to give us the impression he had a conscience. He cared about more than his own self, but that tracker he activated made us doubt him, kind of indicated that might not be true. I have theories on the topic that I'll include in my theory video, which I'll be posting probably later on tonight. But until then, let me know in the comments what you thought of the season finale. Do you believe Snyder betrayed the Bowmans, or do you think there is more to that scene and to that tracker? Let me know as well if you're excited about the show's renewal for a 3rd season. Now if you're a fan of science fiction, make sure you keep tuning in for my The Expanse reviews, and remember, I'll be bringing you reviews of The Leftovers and 12 Monkeys once they start airing new episodes during April and May respectively. And as usual, it would be much appreciated if you drop me a like if you like the content of this review, and if you subscribe if you want to see more reviews of mine on What the Geek. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you soon.